Yo, 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 welcome back to another episode of On the Spot Sports. And before we get to our guest today, we have a big shout out for Living Sisu. Living Sisu is a platform and app that wants to give you all the tools to have success in your sport. Their main objective is to activate your lifestyle. So it's for active people. Enjoy discounts at companies like BioSteel, 30% off, Body Logics, the Goalie Guild, all his books are discounted. Roan, Lululemon for men, 20% off, online stretching programs with Eccentrics, 1 full month free. They got super silent massage guns, 20% off those. And it's a great quality. It's way less expensive than a Theragun, and it's great quality. So there's so many more discounts that you guys will need to just become a member to see. So they want to provide you with anything you need for success. So come join the community. I'm a part of it. A bunch of other athletes are a part of it. So it's free to join. It takes 20 seconds to get exclusive offers to your sport, and it's definitely worth it. So do us a huge favor and go sign up for Living Sisu's membership. It's free, takes 20 seconds. So go do it, and we'll see you there. Living Sisu is a great company. We know one of the co-founders, Zach Fricali. He's a great guy. He's the co-founder. He does a lot of live streams on Instagram at Living Sisu, and with a bunch of elite athletes, and you learn a lot from like the athletes' determination, their resiliency, everything to what made them become successful. So it's been a great experience so far. So go on. I'm gonna leave the link in the description. So go sign up. Yo, welcome back to another episode of On the Spot Sports. I'm Jack, and in today's episode, we are joined by a very special guest, current Chicago Wolves play-by-play announcer, Jason Shaver. Jason is our first broadcaster on the show, so this is very exciting. Jason has been with the Chicago Wolves for 13 seasons now. He was also the broadcaster for the Iowa Stars in 2005 to 2007, as well as a stint with the Houston Aeros in 2007, 2008. So really excited to have you on, Jason. So welcome to the show, Jason Shaver.
Jack, thanks a lot for having me on the show. Good to speak some AHL hockey with you this year. It's been a long wait to see these guys back on the ice in Chicago. Unfortunately, fans can't be there, but Billy Gardner and myself feel really fortunate that at least we get to see them live right now, and I know the rest of you are probably really missing seeing this great franchise.
Yeah, for sure. And just it's so weird just watch them in hockey or watch them on TV when I'm usually at the All-State seeing the team live every game. So it's definitely weird, but it's fun regardless. And at least we're seeing hockey right now. So that's all that I can say right now is just I'm glad to be watching some hockey.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really went down to, almost New Year's Eve time frame when the Wolves finally realized that they were going to actually play this year and be able to play out of the Tripen Center in Hoffman Estates. So it's a great luxury. I mean, it was tough talking to General Manager Wendell Young at times because he started to lose hope that the AHL would be able to play, and if they did play, just with the local health guidelines and facilities and the amount of testing that needs to go, that maybe the Wolves would have to opt out. So very fortunate that this team is playing, and I know it's not ideal, probably not being able to go to Allstate Arena and see them, but hopefully the AHL TV feed suffices and gives you a little taste of what the Wolves look like this year.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's awesome seeing the youngsters come in to play, especially the 4 first rounders that the Wolves have right now, and just see how they're producing right away. Like Jamison Reese, like you said, he was a second rounder, and like he's lighting up the league right now, scoring 3 goals in 3 games. So it's good to see that.
Yeah, and Jack, as a young hockey player yourself, I mean, the amount of skill that these 19-year-olds come into the American Hockey League, it's just so impressive watching. We're 3 games in. Seth Jarvis, who was just drafted by Carolina in October, he scored in all 3 games so far. I mean, it's not supposed to be this easy. That Phil Tomasino, a first-rounder by Nashville, has looked excellent with 5 points so far. You've got Dominic Bach, who's the oldest of the first rounders at 21 years old, who's got plenty of experience playing over in Germany. And then Ryan Suzuki has looked good. And as you mentioned, Jamison Reese, who's also 19 years old and was an early second-round pick. So, I mean, these 5 guys right there alone are just incredible. Then you throw in Tommy Novak and Rem Pitlick, who were with Milwaukee last year. They were both in top 10 in rookie scoring, and they have been dangerous. I mean, Pitlick scored 3 goals in the last 2 games on breakaways. So it's kind of fun to see some of these Admirals players wearing Wolves sweaters and contributing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just never would have thought seeing Milwaukee guys on wearing a wool sweater, but it's definitely nice, especially with the team they had last year where they dominated the whole entire league. And it's good to get some of those players on the team and just combine with Carolina as well and have those 2 great organizations come together and create a really strong Chicago Wolves team.
Yeah, I don't know what's tougher, those Milwaukee Admiral players having to put the Wolves jersey on this year, or Wolves fans having to cheer for Milwaukee Admirals wearing a Chicago sweater.
Yeah, but I'm fine with it because we're starting out the season hot, so it's all that we can ask for right now.
Yeah, for sure. They look great, and there's so many good players that have yet to even get in the lineup yet. Both Nashville and Carolina is kind of part of this agreement. Will each dress 6 forwards. So far, Ryan Warsofsky, the head coach, has had those lines kind of split up, so it's not an all Milwaukee line or an all Chicago Wolves line. All those players, the 12 forwards dressed, have kind of been intermixed between Predators and Hurricanes prospects, so that's made things interesting too.
Yeah, and it's definitely working out in Ryan Warsofsky's favor, and just the team as well is just clicking right now.
Yeah, they look excellent. I know Iowa's got a pretty young team, and the only other team that we haven't seen yet is Cleveland, and right now Columbus is dealing with a whole bunch of trades and injuries, and they've had some COVID issues themselves. So I got to think that the Wolves are probably the best team in the division, having not seen the other 2 yet. But they've looked very impressive against Grand Rapids and against Rockford so far.
Yeah, for sure. So like how is the season for you and just you and Billy, and just like you guys aren't able to go to practices, so you're just seeing them in the games. So how different is it from this year compared to years past?
Well, it's really different. Anytime you change affiliations, which the Wolves did, they have a new NHL partner with the Carolina Hurricanes. So there's always a lot of work to do because there's going to be so many new faces. It helps a little bit that you do have, half the team, at least on the ice, has been Milwaukee players that you're at least accustomed to seeing. But, normally the first 2 weeks of training camp and the first week of practice, Billy and I are there every day, and slowly but surely kind of learn what these guys look like, maybe even how they tape their sticks or their skates, if they're left or right-handed. It helps you pick up who they are without necessarily seeing their number. But this year we did not see any practices due to the COVID protocols. Hopefully moving forward, there'll be 1 day a week that we can watch practice and see the guys. But yeah, the first 2 games that we saw, Billy and I were seeing the players literally for the very first time, and they're wearing different numbers. Rockford, who we saw in the preseason, they have basically all their prospects are wearing the jersey numbers that they have with the Blackhawks. So they've got these football-looking numbers, 61, 63. It was welcome to see Grand Rapids the one game because they had 17 returning players. But it's, I guess it's called first world problems. It's been a real challenge for Billy and I because we just don't have as much eyeballs on these players that we normally do to identify them right away during a game broadcast. But we've managed, and it will get better as the season goes on.
That's all that matters. Just progress each and every game and just get comfortable with the different numbers that are everywhere and like all the different guys on the team. It's like what's it like just being on the edge of your seat, because like they had since like games could change like anytime. Like they added Rockford a couple days ago. They played yesterday. They added a game against Rockford again, like in like a week or so. They're playing Grand Rapids tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like what is that all like, and just being on the edge of your seat at all times?
Yeah, no, the last 2 weeks there's been a lot of long nights continuing to work just to update your notes and stuff like that. And again, I think we were talking before we started recording this. In December, it did not look like the Wolves were going to be able to play. So kind of everything got put on hold as far as my research was concerned. And then all of a sudden we are playing. So it's been scramble mode. And I'm glad that we're playing and I have to scramble, but I've been playing catch up. And then, just because there's been so many outbreaks already in the National Basketball Association, and then of course the National Hockey League has had COVID outbreaks, with Rockford being so close and the Wolves right now so healthy, the two teams added 3 games just to try and get ahead of the curve in case there is an outbreak later in the year that they have these games played. But I was not expecting to actually call a Rockford game until, end of March. So I hadn't done too much work on the Rockford players. So I've been scrambling, but again, I feel so fortunate, and I know Billy does too, that we're able to see these games. So if it means a couple late nights to bone up on your research, I'll gladly take it. But it's even weird that we can't even talk to players, go down, and I don't think we'll be able to do that at all this year, to even have a conversation with them, or just because there's so much going on. We're in the works of trying to set up some Zoom calls and phone interviews with these guys just to get to know them a little bit. But and one of the great things about the American Hockey League and the Wolves in general is the Wolves treat this like a family. So Billy and I have access to walk into the locker room and talk to guys, get their backstory, even a few guys, the correct pronunciation of their name. Jamison Rees, I've been calling him Rees, and then I think it might be Rees, but I haven't been able to sit down and, hey, how do you want to be called this year, which is a change of play pace. But we're working through those challenges the best we can.
Yeah, so the Wolves of Rockford played yesterday. Rockford had a ton of returners, especially Scott Darling, their goaltender, who's played in the NHL. So how cool is it to see Darling back playing in the AHL and trying to get a shot back in the NHL?
Yeah, I would say he played the preseason game. He played half the game against the Wolves, and I think that was his first time, back in North America. Last year, he spent all last year playing in Innsbruck, Austria, and he looked really good. I would have to kind of rewatch the game to judge how he played yesterday a little bit better, but he gave up 5 goals, so I was kind of surprised to see that. But Rockford has a really young team, and they have a lot of guys that are on AHL contracts too. So Scott does not have the team that the Wolves had in front of them. Rockford had so much more power play time yesterday that the shots on goal may be a little bit closer, but the Wolves really dominated 5-on-5 when the teams were playing. So I don't think that's an indication of Scott Darling, but he looked really good in the preseason game. But anytime a netminder of his caliber gives up 5 goals, he's probably not happy.
Yeah, for sure. It's just as a goaltender, anytime you give up those goals, you're not happy no matter what. It's a lose-lose situation right there. It's just not very good right there. But Scott Darling's a fantastic goaltender, and it's definitely going to be fun to see him playing a lot more against the Wolves in this season.
Yeah, now we're playing Rockford, if everything goes according to plan, 11 times. Originally, it was only supposed to be 8. So, I'm sure the Blackhawks, Wakanen's really played well lately there, but I think, a couple weeks ago, maybe Darling was a guy that could potentially end up back with the Blackhawks again down the road, which would, I think, be exciting for fans in the city too.
Yeah, so talking about goaltenders really quick, the Nashville Predators had Kazimir Kaskisuo, who played with the Wolves a few years ago. It's what he was with the Wolves during training camps. I was really looking forward to seeing Kaz play again back in Chicago, but I'm glad he's getting the taxi squad time in Nashville. It's it must have been really cool to find out that Kaz is potentially coming back to Chicago, and because he was fantastic the time he played here.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that he would have been the only player this year that had played for the Wolves in the past. So far, 25 players have played this year, and they've all made their debut. You've got to go all the way back 27 years to the inaugural season. That's the only time it's happened in Wolves player history that they have fielded a brand new team, and that was the inaugural year. They always have had one returning player. So for now, Kazimir Kaskisuo is going to be in the NHL. I don't know that he'll ever make it back to Chicago because Connor Ingram had to take a leave of absence from the team, and I don't know how long that leave is actually going to be. So right now, the NHL requires NHL teams to carry 3 goaltenders, and Kazimir Kaskisuo is the 3rd goaltender. So we might not end up ever seeing him. And the same thing goes now for Carolina. Since you asked about the goaltending, Anton Antoine Bibeau, who got the opening start for the Wolves, a win. He's back with Carolina. Peter Mrazek suffered a broken thumb and had surgery. So, I mean, he's going to be out a few weeks for sure. So right now the Wolves actually only have 2 goaltenders. And Jeremy Helvig has started the last 2. Looked really good yesterday. And then Beck Warm, who was a free agent signing by the Wolves out of the Western Hockey League. I'm sure at some point we'll see him. I don't he has some pretty good numbers in the WHL, but it'll be interesting to see if he can make the jump to the professional level. But going back to your point, when you thought you were going to have Antoine Bibeau and Kazimir Kaskasuo to start the year, goaltending, that looked to be a strength of the team.
Yeah, and everyone was saying stuff about Alex Nedeljkovic too, who was originally the taxi squad member of the Hurricanes, and just having Bibeau, Kaz, and Nedeljkovic, that would have been a tandem to mess with.
Yeah, no, we saw Nedeljkovic there in 2019 when Charlotte knocked off the Wolves in the Calder Cup. He was excellent, and I believe he got the start the other day for Carolina, so he's even been moved off the taxi squad with the injury to Mrazek and getting some playing time in Carolina. He's one of those goaltenders that doesn't have anything left to accomplish in the American Hockey League. Now it's an opportunity to prove it that you belong to be in the NHL.
Yeah, 100%. Like that 2019 run. Let's talk about that for a little bit. And just that 2019 Cup run was phenomenal. Like the team was so like well put together, and like there was a few rough stretches, but other than that, like they came together really fast. Like what was it like from your point to just seeing these guys every day and just actually like seeing them go all the way to the Calder Cup finals?
I mean, it was so fun. It was which is often the case, such a close team. They got along so well, not only on the ice but off the ice. A team that was always together. We travel on the road with them. Don't often hang out with them on the road, obviously, but you see them together. Walking around and doing things together as a team. So very close. My first year with the Wolves was actually the first season after the 4th championship in 2007, 2008 when they won the Calder Cup. And this was the first really great run in the postseason during my time here. So it was so much fun, and just seeing how well the team played. And then they win Game 1 in Charlotte, the Calder Cup finals, and you're like, wow, they really have a great chance. And Charlotte, credit to them, they managed to win the next 4. The Wolves were in every one of those games. They just couldn't seem to get the bounce that you need. But yeah, that was a ton of fun, and by far the best team. The last 3 completed AHL seasons that the Wolves have played, they've had great teams. They've won the division, but sometimes the Wolves' schedule has been pretty busy the last couple of years down the stretch. And the 2 prior years, like 2018 and 2017, going into the playoffs, the Wolves had a lot of injuries. I mean, you go back to that Craig Berube coach team the last year with the partnership with the St. Louis Blues, like when you had Wade Megan out and Kenny Agostino out, I mean, those are just huge losses at an important time of year. But I really like the last 3 full seasons the Wolves have played going into the playoffs. They've had the best team that they could possibly, based on the regular season, put on the ice. Unfortunately, some of those years the injuries just caught up to them, and they couldn't have the long, sustained playoff runs that fans here in Chicago are used to.
Yeah, that year was special, especially like you said with the injuries coming into play. Like
yeah,
Brooks
Carr was
Masick,
out. Yeah,
Daniel Carr, Brooks Masick, they're all out till the second round, and then a lot of people didn't think they'd make it past Grand Rapids that first series, and then like they put something together after that 3rd game where they got like in a bunch of scrums and fights, and that heated rivalry came into play, and then they go on to win the next 2, and then roll past Iowa, go to San Diego, and then finally find themselves against Charlotte in the Calder Cup finals.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, it's so true, and that's what's lost in it. The Wolves actually, that playoff run got healthier as the season and the series went on, which never happens in the playoffs. But that time they were finally able to overcome those hurdles. And you just go back to the way Oscar Dance played, facing elimination when the Wolves were literally down to their last healthy body against Grand Rapids in Game 4 on the road, and they easily, could have folded up the Thames. But Oscar Dance had a great game. They got a couple key goals, and the rest is history. They went on that unbelievable run, and I think that does make that season so special.
Yeah, I definitely think the turning point of that series was the Game 3 when literally they had maybe 9 guys on the bench at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Just because like all the fights and that are breaking out like in third period that game, and it's just crazy what that can do to bring a team together and then have them continue that stretch all the way through.
Yeah, no, that was something. That was the throwback hockey from probably the days before you were even really watching hockey,
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and then we also saw some history with Max Lagasse getting a goalie goal, quote unquote, in San Diego. So that was nice seeing one of the goals players shoot the puck into the empty net after it went off Lagasse, and Lagasse got credit with that. That was pretty cool too.
Yeah, well, it kind of restored order. I think it was a 1-goal game at that point, and San Diego was really starting to pour it on. So it kind of took the momentum away. It was great to just see Max. Oscar got on a run and was playing a lot of those games, but so often is the case with the travel and just trying to keep costs down. In the playoffs, you play the back-to-back games, and Rocky Thompson made the decision that, back-to-back, long playoff run, Oscar's going to play that game, and then the next day Max is going to come in, and he was great, and then ends up getting a goal too. So it was great to see him contribute and have a share in the team's success.
Yeah, and I think that just proves like what we saw this year in the NHL bubble for the playoffs. Like you need 2 goaltenders to step up and be successful during those stretches, and both Dansk and Lagasse both did that last year or 2019, which helped them on the run. And then like you just need a completed team and just guys that are doing it for each other and just wanting to win for their buddies, for their friends, for their teammates, line mates, everything.
Yeah, and Oscar and Max, a credit to them, which isn't always the case, and it doesn't have to be the case either, but they had a real good friendship off the ice. I mean, those two were always together having breakfast, very supportive of each other. And again, that it doesn't mean that that's what it takes to be successful. I mean, hockey is a competitive game, and goaltending is a very competitive position. But I think it was fun to just see the genuine excitement for each netminder when the other was in goal, and they, it was a real good bond, and it made that team even closer when everyone gets along so well.
Yeah, 100%. So like throughout the 13 years that you've been with the Wolves so far, what have been some of your favorite memories that you've had from starting out with the Wolves till now?
Well, I mean, the first season, we started on the road actually in Houston, where I was the year before, and then San Antonio. Coming home for the Wolves home opener and seeing the banner raising was something really exciting. And I had been in the American Hockey League at that time for 3 years, and you had such a tremendous respect for the Chicago Wolves, just the way they do things, and then to kind of peel back the curtain and get the opportunity to work for them was very exciting. We were doing 80 games on television, which was new to me, and getting to work with Billy Gardner, having a full-time analyst, our great program production crew. So, the TV side is a lot different than radio, where it's just, 1 or 2 people. And, on the TV broadcast, you've got producers and directors and graphics producers, audio people, like so many people that you travel with that you've got you almost have your own little team of guys and gals that you enjoy working with and traveling with. So that was a ton of fun. The first real nice team that the Wolves had during my time was the 2009-10 season. That was the one where he still had Tim Stapleton, Brett Sterling, Chris Chelios on the back end. They had a great team. They ended up losing in the division finals to the Texas Stars and in a couple overtimes. I remember Dallas sent a rookie, Jamie Benn, down for the playoffs. He hadn't played in the American Hockey League all all season long, and he joined Texas for that playoff run. They ended up going to the Calder Cup finals that year, but they knocked the Wolves off, and I think double overtime with Jamie Benn getting the hat trick. And that team was so good. And there's been a lot of really good teams that just, whatever has happened, even the year Jake Allen was the Baz Bastine Award winner as the top goalie in the American Hockey League. He probably gave up maybe one or two bad goals all season long, and then you get to the playoffs and they're in the division finals again playing against the Toronto Marlies, and just for whatever reason the puck was eluding Jake Allen, and he gave up, quote unquote, a bad goal every game. And it's something that just never happened before. And that ruined another really good Wolves team. So I think the best thing about working for the Wolves is the support Don Levin and ownership has. I mean, they're just such great people to work for. And then secondly is, the Wolves are going to have a competitive team every year. I mean, it doesn't always happen. It's hockey. Injuries can happen. Maybe your NHL partner has a rash of injuries, so some guys that are supposed to be here don't end up being here, or a guy has an off year. But going into every season, the Wolves have spent some money. They've brought in some good players. They have good, in my time, they've had numerous great coaches, and Ryan Warsofsky, the newest head coach for the Wolves, seems to be right up there with the great names that you've already had coaching here. So I think that's probably the best thing about the Wolves. It's going to be a pretty darn good team, and you're working with great people.
Yeah, those are some great memories. And just going off that a little bit with like games against like Rockford, Milwaukee, like what have been some of your what has been like some of your favorite rivalry moments between like the Wolves Ice Hogs, Wolves Milwaukee, Wolves Grand Rapids, and like all those games?
Well, the Grand Rapids one, just in the recent run, they've faced off against each other so much in the playoffs where it gets dialed up a notch or two. So, I mean, and you go back to what you just talked about, that 2019 playoff run where, the prior two times that they'd faced off against Grand Rapids had actually knocked off the Wolves and then went on to win the Calder Cup, which is always not good for the bragging rights if you're a Wolves fan and working for the Wolves. So it was so nice to see them win that year. So that's certainly been a great rivalry, and those games stand out. And, lately, outside of last year, the Wolves kind of had Milwaukee's number for the last few years where they've had the upper hand. And there's so many great games, and they're so close, and that rivalry is 27 years strong. Well, 26 years strong, because the Wolves and Milwaukee aren't playing against each other this year. And I just think, like, Rockford and Milwaukee in particular, the Wolves play them so often during the regular season, but for whatever reason, those games are never a dud. You would think, like, oh, it's the same team over and over, but most of those games are super exciting. In the Rockford series, I was just doing notes for our next game here, which is crazy. So the Wolves and Rockford have now played 147 times in 14 years.
Wow.
Rockford has won 74 of the games. The Wolves have won 73. And if you add all the point totals up, the Wolves actually have, because of overtime losses, have had two more points in 14 years against the Rockford Ice Hogs. Like, how is that even possible that you've played a team 147 times and the records are almost identical? It's crazy how great that rivalry is. And even when Rockford's bad and the Wolves are really good, somehow those 12 games are great. And, when Rockford's bad, they still somehow manage to beat the Wolves probably more often than they should when the Wolves have really good teams. So it's a great rivalry.
Yeah, especially that rivalry in particular. Like, you don't know what to expect during those games. Like, they're usually close. They're like, there's always
fights off the ice.
Fights off the ice. Fights everywhere. I remember the last game of the season last year. There's March 8th. Like, Sparks and Tompkins almost went at it.
Yeah.
Like, there was like a bunch of fights before that too, and just I was at the game where Bennington fought LeBrie.
Oh yeah.
Rockford, like, they're the bench brawls between them. Like, there's so much action going on whenever they play each other. And like last year, the Ice Hawks went up like 5-0,
Mm-hmm.
like to start off the year against them, and then the Wolves were coming back and won the last like 3 or 4 before the
Yep.
shutdown. So it just says how close and how good of a rivalry and intense rivalry that is.
Yeah, Jack, taking your point there, the Rockford won the first 5 games last year. That was the first time any team had won 5 straight, and now, as you mentioned, the Wolves had Rockford's number down the stretch last season. The Wolves have now won 4 in a row, 2 this year, the last 2 last year, and they've taken 5 of the last 6. So just when you think one of the teams is getting a leg up, the other one returns and with vengeance. And now the Wolves have a chance when they get together next Tuesday in Rockford to win their 5th straight against the Ice Hogs, a streak that the Wolves haven't yet been able to accomplish against their in-state rivals.
Yeah, and then the Milwaukee rivalry is also close. Like
Mm-hmm.
there also it's starting to get more intense and more feisty as the season goes on. And then like it seems like it's always going into overtime, those games, and
Yeah.
especially last year and 2 years ago, like every single game I went to against them, it was like 5-4 overtime game, or like the Wolves score with like a minute left in the game to tie the game up and then win it in overtime. Like all those crazy times on like Grand Rapids, like that game 3 of the Calder Cup finals, and then like in the 2017 playoffs too, with like Scooter Vaughn fighting
Yeah.
2 of their players at the same time, and then like it's those rivalries are the most fun to be at.
Yeah, and that I mean that's the beauty. Maybe fans don't want to see them as often, but I also think that they're the best games that the Wolves play all season long from an entertainment standpoint. Because as your point, you never know what is going to happen, Jack, when these 2 teams take the ice, and it doesn't matter what the records are, something's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And just it's so much fun being like at those games, and just especially or seeing them on TV as well. Like you never know what you're gonna expect, and I find myself yelling at the TV when I'm not at the games. Just that's how big the rivalry is, and it's just super fun to be a part of as a fan.
Well, both Milwaukee and Rockford are so close. So you get more than a handful of fans for the other team in the building, which kind of creates almost a college atmosphere. When at Allstate Arena, it's definitely at least 75% Wolves fans, but you get some nice numbers of Milwaukee people driving down and Rockford people coming over, which there's a little smacks talk in the stands too.
Yeah, the All-State gets packed when against Rockford and Milwaukee and those teams, and it's a super fun atmosphere to be at. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so going like before you were with the Wolves, you were with the Houston Aeros and the Iowa Wild or Iowa Stars at the time.
Yep.
So like, what was your experience with over there, and just like starting out your broadcasting career over there at the with the Wild or with the Stars and the Aeros?
Yeah, it was pretty excited to get to the American Hockey League, to be honest with you. I had spent 2 years prior to that in the ECHL with a team called the Texas Wildcatters. They were an expansion team in Beaumont, Texas, which is basically 40 minutes from the Louisiana border. So they had never had hockey. They'd never had a hockey rink in that marketplace. So that was a ton of fun to just, your first professional job to go there and start up a franchise in an area where so many people were unfamiliar with hockey, and just kind of seeing the excitement that they got out of seeing hockey live for the first time. Unfortunately, the teams weren't very good. And then after 2 years there, the AHL really started to expand and try to get, an AHL team for every NHL team. At that time, the American Hockey League, there was a lot of shared affiliation. And the Iowa Stars were a startup team in Des Moines, Iowa. Again, similar. Des Moines hadn't had pro hockey there since the late 70s. So it was a brand new arena, Wells Fargo Arena. And they've had good success in the USHL with the long-standing Des Moines Buccaneers. Actually, Peter Menino, the ex-Wolves goaltender, is now the head coach for the Des Moines Buccaneers. They still play there, but they play out of a real old arena that, quite frankly, is quite outdated at this point. So it was just great to be in the American Hockey League. And that first year with the Dallas Stars affiliate, they had about 6 Edmonton Oiler prospects, and it is amazing the amount of players in my 2 years on the Iowa Stars that went on to have great NHL careers, guys like Louis Erickson, Toby Peterson, Mark Fistrick, Nicholas Grossman, both goaltenders, Dan Ellis and Mike Smith, had good runs in the National Hockey League. So for me, coming from the ECHL, where the hockey was good and the players were hoping to get to the American Hockey League, and a few players end up making it all the way to the National Hockey League, it was just exciting to see these young 20-year-old guys that come in, and there's a lot of Europeans that are experiencing North America for the first time and then going on to have great NHL careers. And then unfortunately, after my first 2 years there, they had some management changes and an opportunity developed with the Houston Aeros for me to go down there. I grew up in Minnesota. The Minnesota Wild owned the team in Houston, so it was fun for me to go to Houston and work for the Minnesota Wild. They had a decent team. That was the year that the Wolves won the championship, where Rockford and Chicago were truly the class of the division that year. But Houston was in the playoffs, and they were kind of a scrappy team. And it was nice to be back in Texas and working for the Wild. And I honestly, didn't really think I would ever leave Houston. I had a great setup, but when Pat Foley went back to the Blackhawks and the opportunity with the Wolves arose, and just having gotten to know Billy Gardner over the 3 years that I had been in the American Hockey League, he kind of encouraged me to apply for the job, and I was like, well, I'm pretty happy here in Houston. I don't know that I'd want to stir the pot and try to go somewhere else, and then if it didn't work out, I'd feel really bad, telling my bosses in Houston, hey, I'd like to apply for the Chicago Wolves job. Oh, by the way, I still want my job here in Houston, but things worked out, and I'm grateful not only that the Minnesota Wild in Houston, I was still under contract, let me interview with the Wolves, and even more grateful that I got the opportunity to work for the Chicago Wolves. I mean, it's a great place to work with some great people.
Yeah, so how much does that Houston organization mean to you, especially since it's not an organization anymore in the AHL? It's like, how much did it mean to you, and like what was it like when you found out that they weren't an organization anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. They moved to Des Moines, where another place that I had been, and unfortunately, the first team in Des Moines ended up failing, and that was more due to ownership issues. American Hockey League independently owned teams have to pay an affiliation fee to their NHL parent clubs, and unfortunately, the ownership was not paying their affiliation fees with the Dallas Stars, so Dallas left, and then their new partner Anaheim quickly wasn't getting paid either. So the AHL unfortunately had to step in, and that team ended up getting sold and moved. And it wasn't necessarily a glaring eye on Des Moines. They were supporting the team fine, and they've certainly been very supportive of the Iowa Wild now. They were actually, attendance-wise and stuff, probably even more successful than the Iowa Stars were. And then, so I felt bad that Houston was leaving the team, but I was happy for Iowa to get the team. And again, nothing that really the Houston Aeros could do. The Toyota Center is run by the Houston Rockets, and it just came to a point where the Houston Rockets were increasing the rent that they had to pay, and it finally got to a point where the Minnesota Wild couldn't justify paying that much money to play out of the Toyota Center. Houston is a great Southern hockey market. They supported the Aeros really well, and it's tough to see them not in the schedule anymore. Houston comes up quite a bit on potential, relocation or expansion talk, and I think Houston would be a great NHL city. It was a very good American Hockey League city, but you have to either have the Rockets involved in ownership or some sort of, leniency on the lease agreement to make it profitable there.
Yeah, for sure. And like those games were also fun to watch, and like they had some pretty cool jerseys as well, like the green jerseys and the green silver. Like those are pretty sick.
Yeah, and great rivalry. I mean, you think of the Wolves when they first came in the IHL. I mean, Houston had a really good team. I mean, Houston and Chicago were great rivals, and it was fun to experience that rivalry on both sides. And
yeah, those are always the best times. So, going into your broadcasting career, like a little bit here, like what are like the steps to take to become a broadcaster? Like, what do you have to take in school? Like, what made you become a broadcaster and stuff like that?
Well, I'm actually a third generation broadcaster. So my grandfather was the play-by-play broadcaster on radio for the Minnesota North Stars for all 26 years that the North Stars were in existence. So when the team relocated to Dallas, my grandfather retired. My father followed his dad's footsteps, and he is currently the play-by-play broadcaster for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers. Back when the Wolves first came into existence, Minnesota had an IHL team called the Minnesota Moose. They're now the Manitoba Moose. But when the Wild came back, the Moose left Minnesota and went to Winnipeg. But so my dad was the broadcaster for them. He was a broadcaster, depending on what TV station had the North Star rights. He did several seasons of North Stars hockey. So that's kind of how I got into broadcasting. Is the family business per se. So when I was going to school, I played hockey at a Division III school in Minnesota called Augsburg College, and looking at a major and trying to figure out what I was going to do. I always remember the advice my grandfather gave me. He didn't say, hey, you should become a hockey broadcaster, but he just said, I've never regretted a day in my life of going to work. It's a job that he absolutely loved, and my father absolutely loves calling hockey. So as I realized, playing Division III college hockey, I was not going to become a professional hockey player, but I wanted to stay involved in the game. So I would simply take a recorder. At the time when I first was going to school, the North Stars was still playing in Minnesota. So on off nights or a weeknight, I would go and call the North Stars Blackhawk game into a recorder from the press box. I'd find a quiet little area and do that. And then my senior year is when the first season for the Wolves and Minnesota Moose. So same thing, when those IHL games would take place, and if I didn't have a conflict with school or something else, I would go to the arena and find a quiet area and call those games. And I was fortunate after I got done with school, I got hired by the Waterloo Blackhawks in the USHL and did a season there. Ownership, unfortunately, was really struggling and couldn't pay their bills. So I actually got out of hockey for a few years and worked in the real world. And then minor league hockey was expanding, and that's how I ended up in the ECHL with the Texas Wildcatters. Again, just getting back into it and kind of worked my way up from there to get to Chicago, the best spot in the American Hockey League.
Yeah, so would you say that your grandfather and your dad were one of your most was inspirational for you, and just to get to follow their footsteps and becoming a broadcaster, and just you looked up to them your entire life?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone who follows sports, whether it be hockey, basketball, football, baseball, they have their favorite broadcasters. Mine just happened to be family members, which is, I guess, kind of unique. But when you're growing up in that environment, you don't know any different. But I love listening to my grandfather when we were driving around the car, or sitting at home and watching my dad call games on TV. It was pretty cool. And the benefits, working for hockey teams, they always had tickets to games, so I got to see a lot of tickets or a lot of hockey. And I don't know if it's a great quality of life sometimes when you have to travel and be away from home so much. And we're always playing the day after Christmas and throughout the Thanksgiving holidays, and I'm not complaining about that. That's normal, but that's just some of the things that you kind of miss out in life. But I grew up in an environment where you missed out on those types of things, so it's not a big deal. But
Yeah.
they're very encouraging to me. Once no pressure to ever get involved in it, but I think they're both very proud that I've followed in their footsteps.
Yeah, those are the times where you just go to games whenever and just live out those, just watching hockey and going to school, and then just coming back, watching the game, recording for the broadcast, and just nothing better there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just probably complete your question there. Sorry, I kind of walked over it, but for school wise, I studied communications, and there really isn't a curriculum per se that will help you become a play-by-play broadcaster. But writing speeches and articulating speeches, social media is very important. You're doing a podcast now, which is great practice. For moving into radio or TV or even play-by-play. Those things weren't around when I was there. But anytime you can get hands-on play-by-play experience, that's how you learn best. It's not a book you can read. There's I could tell you a million things about play-by-play that's not going to necessarily make you a good play-by-play broadcaster. It's repetition, and a sport like hockey where it's so fast, the hardest thing is saying the right words at the right time when you're first starting out. But now it's super easy because the game takes care of itself. Like baseball's a really easy sport to call and not be very good at, but it's a very tough sport to be really good at as a play-by-play broadcaster because there's so much downtime and you have to fill that time. With the Wolves, I call the play-by-play and then I shut up and let Billy articulate and entertain the audience. So, I encourage all young broadcasters to turn the sound down on your TV or pull up YouTube videos of hockey games right now and just practice calling them into a microphone and listen to your work. And don't worry about necessarily what I might say or anyone else might say about your broadcast, because at the end of the day, there's a bunch of different ways to call hockey and in any sport. You've got to be comfortable with the style that works best for you. So listen to your work and self-critique and make the changes that you like. But the more you do, the better you'll get at play-by-play.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you touched on this a little bit, but like what's the most difficult part about being a broadcaster, and like how do you go about just trying to say the right words whenever like a fast quick play happens? Like how do you like come up with words just right from the start?
I mean, now it's just second nature, and I find at times too, like I still to this day watch almost every Wolves game back and I have a little journal that I'll write some things down just to notice trends. And there's times where you think you had a really good broadcast, then you go and watch it and you're like, oh my goodness, I was stepping all over Billy, or I mispronounced this name, or I wasn't as good as I thought. And then there are games that you think you actually sounded terrible and you go back and watch it and you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. But so you try to work in a variety of words, and this year has been a real challenge just not having to seen these players. So I feel like there's room for improvement. But now that we've done 3 games, they should be all much better moving forward. But the biggest challenge, I think, is when you get like 3 guys called up from the ECHL that you've never seen before, and you're playing that team that day. That's the American Hockey League, so that can be tough. One of the benefits of playing Milwaukee and Grand Rapids and Rockford so many times is there's not a lot of studying you need to do after you've seen those teams 2 or 3 times a season. And once you see the Wolves 3 times, you pretty much have all those names down. So, but the first few games of the year always create a little bit of anxiety just because you haven't done it for 6 months, and there's some new names and numbers and pronunciations that you don't want to screw up.
Yeah, that seems like it'd be difficult to just find the words, like, but like as you said, like once you do it, like it comes easy and like it comes second nature, like everything in life, like you do stuff a lot, like play hockey, like what you do on the ice is second nature at that point.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's cool to see like how that like develops from like the start, and then like how you are like now, and it's second nature to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anyone who's fairly good at their job or been doing their job for a long time. If you're a painter or a plumber or an electrician, like I could do a couple things, but it would take me forever to do those things, and I might screw it up. But the more you do those type of trade work, those guys come in and they rewire a whole house in an afternoon. And you're like, how did you do that? That would have taken me 3 weeks. So my job is to know guys' names right away and be able to put a couple words to what they're doing on the ice. And, the more times I've done it, the easier that gets.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jason, I have a few more questions for you.
Okay.
So do you have any tips for up and coming broadcasters?
I mean, we've kind of talked about it, Jack, but to just get repetitions, hopefully, once fans are allowed back at Allstate Arena, come on a Wednesday night and sit in the upper deck and call games. There's plenty of hockey now on TV between the NHL Network, the Wolves, the Blackhawks, YouTube videos. Again, just call them off the TV if you have to get that experience. There's college hockey. There's several Division III schools here in the Chicagoland that are calling games. There's a vibrant AAA programs that all put games on TV. High school hockey. So, reach out to some of those teams that maybe aren't getting the coverage that they would like. Do the things that you're doing. Anyone can create a podcast right now, and it's pretty easy through social media to reach out to athletes to ask them to be on your podcast. anything you can do to get repetitions and, listen to your work and, reach out and ask people for advice, but also know that at the end of the day, it's your play-by-play career, so you have to be happy with what you say. I mean, I could tell you that, oh, I don't like this, but if that's what you like to do, that's what you need to do. I often use the analogy of Joe Buck, who is the top broadcaster on Fox, does the World Series, does a lot of Super Bowls, and for whatever reason, he takes a beating sometimes. Some people just don't like the way he calls a game. But at the end of the day, he's one of the best broadcasters in the entire world. And the fact that he has people critiquing his work is, kind of ridiculous, right? The guy's doing Super Bowls and World Series. So not everyone's going to like your style of play-by-play, but as long as you like your style of play-by-play and your employer likes your style of play-by-play, that's really all that matters.
Yeah, that's a great tip there. So talking about podcasts, you also have been part of a podcast called Life Under the Pandemic for the Chicago Wolves podcast. So, like, what was the origins of that, and like what started, and like how much fun do you have creating the podcast?
It's been a ton of fun. It started because the Wolves season got canceled, and we weren't quite sure of what was going to happen. And we've been very fortunate. All of us with the Wolves have continued to be paid the entire time. Don Levin did not lay off a single employee, and we're grateful for that. So, part of that is you want to earn your paycheck and try to create some content for the fans, with the help of Courtney Mahoney. And then, the other vice president for the Wolves, John Seda, they kind of allowed us to peel back the curtain a little bit. And this is what the franchise is going through a pandemic. Like, how are they communicating with the fans? What are the challenges of not knowing if that last season was going to start back up? I mean, the Wolves were going to host a 3-3 that weekend. And that was the first time in several years that the Wolves were going to have 3 home games in 3 days. And, we've got some great ticket sales people. Stephanie Evans had 2 huge groups coming out to those weekends. I mean, there were going to be near capacity crowds on that Saturday and Sunday, and all of a sudden that just evaporates. So that's how the podcast came to be. I had done some interviews and put some stuff together. And the funny thing is, Jack, and you can appreciate this as a podcaster. I mean, I'm a play-by-play guy, so I'm used to getting amped up. I'm not used to just talking to myself in a microphone with no one there or no action. So if you listen to the first 2 podcasts, I mean, I am either really mundane or way over the top. So for me, it was good to learn some new skill sets. And Emran Javed, who I've worked with in my entire time, he's actually been with the Wolves since 2003, a longtime employee. He actually has a couple of his own podcasts that he's done. So, we've teamed up together, and he has made the transitioning into podcasting much easier for me. He's the co-host, but he's the one that does, a lot of the work setting me up and kind of calming me down to have more of a natural voice on a podcast. But, to your point, you're trying to learn the play-by-play skills. Well, I'm trying to learn how to podcast and sound like a normal human being. So, but it's been a ton of fun, and really appreciate Courtney Mahoney helping get this launched. And this year it'll be a good way to kind of introduce some of the Wolves players that fans won't get to meet in person this year at season ticket holder events, or get fed by the Wolves and some of the other great charity events where you normally typically have access to these players.
Yeah, and that's just awesome with like what you guys did with the podcast and everything to come up with it and just give some light on what everyone's going through, and just especially like during these times, like anyone could use the happiness and like get their minds off what's going on in the world and just sit down, like listen to a podcast, like when you're driving, when you're just alone, like anywhere you literally could listen to a podcast anywhere. So it's definitely good to have that you guys create, and like I personally enjoy them, and I listen to everyone, and it's just so much fun listening to you guys and just talking about like what's going on through everything around the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you listening. And yeah, it has been a lot of fun. And, again, the Wolves are a good organization for kind of letting people hear some of the challenges that they have faced, even going back to like the Tim Breslin Award or the Dan Snyder Award, that those didn't get handed out this year, and how meaningful those are. And, Denise, who has a son that has had just a bunch of medical issues, and Oscar Dance stepped up. So just getting to share that story a little bit about some of the challenges that people are facing in the Chicagoland community. And when the Wolves season got canceled, those people didn't get to get recognized, along with the Dan Snyder award. So, that's disappointing, but it was at least having the podcast, it was a way to showcase some of the stuff that our fans are going through too, not only the organization.
Yeah, and you've also had guests on. You've had Scooter Vaughn on. So like how fun is it just interviewing like all these former Wolves players and just see how they're doing with life right now?
Yeah, no, it's really good. And Scooter was such a fan favorite here in Chicago, and a guy that has his hand in just a million different things. He's an entrepreneur at heart, and he's doing some great things. And I think actually he reached out to Emron not too long ago. I believe he is going to be launching his own podcast, talking with other African-American hockey players in trying to bring some light to some of the great players. But Scooter, he's definitely the most interesting person that I've met in hockey off the ice. Just the wide variety of subjects that he can talk about, articulate about, and has just so many different interests. He's a guy that plays the guitar. He's maybe getting into podcasting. Has launched several different companies in his time. He's designed T-shirts and some fashion stuff too. So it was great catching up to him. And I think moving maybe next in the next off season, we'll probably do some more of those look back at some players. And you mentioned the podcast that talking with Ben Simon, who's now the head coach of the Grand Rapids Griffins, but just hearing some of his stories of playing with Dan Snyder, it's fun to go back, and that's something that when the season's over, we'll probably do a little bit more of. Some of the more popular players, interview them for the podcast.
Yeah, that's just fantastic, and it's bringing everyone joy. So just keep doing it, keep it up, and just throughout like all this time, just it's fun catching up on podcasts and just listening to everything that the organization's gone through, and like just like the guests that you guys are having on too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of podcasts, much like yourself. I mean, every time I'm driving out to Hoffman Estates for a Wolves practice or game, I'm listening to podcasts. I don't listen to the radio really at all anymore. I just find podcasts, the storytelling, and there's so many different podcasts out there. I really enjoy it. And this year I'll be driving separately to all these away games so that if I do come across COVID, I'm not transmitting to any of the players. So just out of protocol. So, I mean, these drives to Rockford, Grand Rapids this year, I look forward to listening to your podcast and many others.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's awesome. So, Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. I want to wish you the best of luck going forward with the season. And this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. And yeah, there's it's very disappointing that fans won't be in attendance to see the Wolves team, but hopefully you can tune in, on the Wolves Facebook stream or watch it on AHL TV, because it's going to be an exciting team to watch this year.
Absolutely. I'm definitely ready for that.
Yep.